Lane Kiffin's decision to leave Ole Miss, it's going to hurt the Rebels when the playoff committee announces the final rankings.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day on the nation's #1 podcasting network, Locked On. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, if you are a new customer, you can bet $5, and if it hits, you will gain $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. Download it today. We're going to get to the latest recruiting commitments, decommitments, as we do each and every day on the noon live show here on the Portal Podcast. There's some interesting stuff going on. Florida State and some other programs, West Virginia, Texas. We have some things to get to. We're also going to talk about 3 rivalry games. Indiana versus Purdue. I'm an Indiana grad. That game has a little more significance this year than it usually does. Usually one of them is just trying to get to a bowl. Indiana is trying to secure a chance to get into the Big Ten title game, possibly ending up with the #1 overall seed. Really important game. Georgia versus Georgia Tech. Keep hearing how everybody thinks this is going to be a great game. I don't think so. And I'm going to prove why the Georgia Bulldogs are going to absolutely trounce Georgia Tech. But to start, we're going to talk about Ole Miss traveling to Mississippi State to play in the Egg Bowl and why that game is such a big deal. College football has so many different things going on, but nothing is bigger than the Kiffin situation because he's trying to have his cake and eat it too. But it looks like he's going to have to cut bait with Ole Miss because it seems pretty obvious that it's trending that he is no longer going to be at Ole Miss after this weekend. How will the playoff committee evaluate that? Now, full disclosure, I fully expect Ole Miss to win the game despite the distraction. I don't think it's going to help. But Mississippi State and the stats, oof, they are brutal. They do not lie. They cannot stop the run. They are 120th out of 136 teams in college football at stopping the run. They give up 189.8 yards per game. Meanwhile, 188.7 yards per game is what Ole Miss averages. And Keewan Lacey's probably not going to be very friendly with the Mississippi State defense. Trinidad Chambliss and just a bevy honeycomb at receiver and all these different guys they have, they're going to light it up. I think they'll win by 10 or more. And as a final score, just for fun, I've got them winning 31-20 on the road in the Egg Bowl. So you would think Ole Miss is going to finish with that roster that's been so well blended with the NIL for the portal and high school. Probably the best job in college football over the last couple of years is this year's Ole Miss squad. You would think they'd be a 6 seed. Here's the caveat. As the 2023 season shows, the playoff committee reserves the right within its language to dock a team if they lose a key player or coach. Lane Kiffin is the head coach. If it is announced that he's going to either Florida or LSU on Saturday, for those who don't know, the Egg Bowl is on Friday at 11 a.m. Central, so local time, noon Eastern. If he announces on Saturday, as it is anticipated, and he's leaving, I expect the committee to dock them. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm expecting that that's what they will do. It's in their language, etc. They want chemistry. They want things trending up on the field and off the field. They've shown that with their playoff rankings this year. Teams that have played better in the back half of the season have been rewarded more. I think that's pretty clear. To that end, there is nothing worse that could happen to a team than losing their coach. Now, where they're going to place the Rebels, I do not know. What I do know is this. If they leave Ole Miss completely out of the playoff, it's ridiculous. If they win the Egg Bowl, go 11-1, and while it's probably the easiest SEC slate this year, it's still not easy across the board. They still played at Oklahoma and won, and they almost won at Georgia, and they're 11-1 if they win the Egg Bowl. You cannot leave them out, even if Kiffin does leave the program. I'm not saying there's an easy answer for this. I'm not saying you can't dock them. I get it, but you cannot completely take the Rebels out of the playoff. And essentially, if you take them out of the top 10, they're done because you still got the ACC champ, Virginia, maybe. I don't know how that's going to go. Maybe it's SMU. And then you also have, and this is something I'll argue against after the season, the group of 6 team that will most likely be ranked number 12. That means you got to be in the top 10. They're number 6 right now. They'd only have to fall 5 spots if Lane Kiffin ejects himself from the Ole Miss position. Personally, I think he's going to go to LSU, but if it's Florida, it wouldn't surprise me. It's Lane Kiffin after all. But that's not the point. The committee, again, it's within their right, based on the language, on how they determine the playoff rankings, to go out there and make a mandate, hey, we dropped him because Kiffin left. But how far you drop him is what I'm getting at. I think Ole Miss is going to get the short end of the stick and Kiffin's going to leave. And I think the fans are going to be angry. Personally, I hope they still end up with the 8 seed. I think that's probably the best case scenario for them. That way they would host a playoff game. I don't know who the head coach would be or how it would work. No clue. What I do know is the following. Ole Miss is in a scenario where they don't control their own fate. And that's got to feel a little bit flimsy if you're a fan, if you're a booster, if you're an alum, if you're a former player, anything else. And that's unfortunate. But college football is not about fair. It is about circumstances being wild. Every year it's wild. It's why I follow and probably why many of you are watching this podcast right now. You're just as surprised as I am. It seems like every day that when something happens, you're like, why would that be the case? But every day it seems like there's something like that. Even in the offseason, there are stretches where it's just like, did that really just transpire? This is the latest in many different things in the history of the Egg Bowl, in the history of Ole Miss football that are just weird. But the playoff committee could make it worse if they drop Ole Miss below number 8. Let's see what they do and see why it happens. They would have to give their explanation, and that's going to be rough if I'm right on that. When I come back, we're going to talk about Georgia versus Georgia Tech and Indiana versus Purdue. And kind of just start beginning to break down all these rivalry games. Those are the 2 I'm going to talk about today. Where I got more later this week here on the Portal Podcast. That's next. Let's get it. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of an NBA game or just want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to the fourth quarter comebacks that we all enjoy watching. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps the game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Let's talk a little bit about Georgia Tech and all the ramifications there. And then we'll get into Indiana as well. It's a rather interesting game for me when it relates to Georgia and Georgia Tech because the 2 schools hate each other. And it's also I'll get into the chat right after this for those of you in there. And thank you very much. If you got comments, fire away in the chat. I'm more than happy to help. But with Georgia Tech, you got a school last year that really had Georgia on the ropes, and they lose, 8 overtimes or something like it was just something absurd. But you were the hunter then. Now you've let yourself kind of be shown, and you also let everybody off the hook by completely laying an egg at home against Pittsburgh. Nobody's going to feel sorry for you. Georgia may or may not be without Chauncey Bowens, their talented running back, but they've got plenty of others. Nate Frazier's fine, and they've got other guys too. They're just fine. And their offensive line is starting to pick up steam. It's getting better and better. I don't like this game for Georgia Tech because of the personality of this game in general. Again, they're better when they can lie low in the weeds, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen at all. And there's a stat here, kind of like the one I gave in the Ole Miss versus Mississippi State game, that's going to back it up. Stats don't lie. They don't lie. For a season, maybe one game, there's aberrations. But here's Georgia Tech. What do you want to think they give up a game on the ground? Take a wild guess. And again, there are 136 teams in the FBS. They are 96th in rush defense. Does that sound like a team that really was going to be a conference champion? I've been calling them out for several weeks. They don't recruit well enough in the trenches. So we talk about here on the Portal Podcast all the time. And while they have a great coaching staff, they really do. At some point, it's about my guy is better than yours or he's not. And Pittsburgh flat ran over them, and they don't have a big running back. And they've got an offensive line that's in shambles because of injuries, and they ran over you in your home stadium when you had to have it. Yet you hear people say, watch out for Georgia Tech against Georgia. Georgia's not going to be surprised when Georgia Tech comes out firing. They're not going to play 80% like they did in last year's game for part of that game. They're not. And here's the other side of it. Again, their O-line's playing better. Nate Frazier is probably going to be the guy for them. He'll get most of the carries. He'll go for 80 to 100, and they'll run 2 or 3 other guys. And don't forget about Gunnar Stockton. He's a very mobile quarterback. Well, UGA is 29th in the nation at 190.5 yards per game on the ground. And again, Georgia Tech gives up 167.8. How do we think that's going to go? Well, I can tell you how I think it's going to go. I think it's going to go like a blowout. It's going to be played in Mercedes-Benz. It's not at Georgia Tech, even though they played at Georgia last year. That program must be broke because they keep selling games. They're going to the Dome. They did it last year against Notre Dame too. And they're going to play that game there. That's going to be a Georgia crowd, basically. And they've got the better linemen. I trust Haynes King, but he doesn't have enough players around him. And the defense, well, he has nothing to do with that. Recruiting matters. Georgia completely annihilates Georgia Tech with in-state recruiting year in, year out. They have my entire life. To that point, I want to ask anybody that's a Tech fan or follows either program closely in any way, shape, or form. I want you to think about this. Name the last time that an in-state Peach State kid that was a defensive lineman or offensive lineman picked Tech over Georgia when the Bulldogs truly went after that young man throughout, like from his junior year on. We want this kid. Not last minute, not they kind of wanted him. If they didn't get him, it was whatever. Wholeheartedly, he was the dude they wanted, and Tech out recruited him. O-line or D-line? Name one. Surely there is, and I'm missing it. But I doubt it. And right there is why Georgia is going to bomb Georgia Tech. Trenches. They're going to be way better, not kind of, but way better in the trenches. And again, there will be no snake in the grass, no lion in the weeds, no surprise. Everybody knows Tech's pretty good. They're not surprising anybody. They're going to get Georgia's A game. Good luck. I've got Georgia winning this one 38-14. I think it will be an absolute annihilation. Hope I'm wrong, but I think that it will be 2nd and 5 all day for Georgia. To be 2nd and 7 and 2nd and 8 for Georgia Tech. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that game's going to be very close. Finally, Indiana versus Purdue as it relates to what I'm going to cover for today's games. This is a rivalry that I grew up with because I grew up in Indiana. I attended Indiana, but it's never been a good rivalry because both teams are just whatever in football until last year. Indiana and Purdue, I don't care if they play this game at the Chancellor's house for Purdue this year. It's not going to go well for the Boilers. Indiana has a chance to make a major statement, go into the playoff, get a bye, all those things. They got all the motivation in the world. And just like with the last 2 games, here come the rushing stats. They don't lie. This is for a whole season, so you're pretty much who you are. You played 11 games if you're Purdue. They're 92nd in run defense. Talk about teams that don't recruit well in the trenches. Indiana be one. They've lost some guys. Heltz at Clemson. Cole Brevard went to Texas like they've been bought. Their roster's been bought. 166.1. And Indiana averages 218.4. That's not going to go well. I'm going to go Roman Hemby for 100 plus, and it would not surprise me in this game if he went for $150. Kalen Black's another guy that could absolutely go for a big game too. They rotate him, but one or the other will go for 100 plus yards. Fernando Mendoza is trying to win the Heisman. Maybe could be a state of Indiana battle. Could be him against Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame. Bottom line, they're going to put up some points. I got them winning 45-24. I think Indiana will give up a late touchdown, but like the starters will basically be out of the game by the early 4th quarter. They will run basic inside zone, mid zone, outside zone, you name it. it'll be 2nd down and 4 most of the day. And then when you give somebody as good as Surratt on the outside some one-on-one coverage, some favorable down and distances, he's going to win more often than not. And Mendoza, once again, he's a Heisman candidate and possible favorite, is throwing him the football. Indiana has used the portal as well as anybody over the last 2 seasons when it comes to hitting big. Not necessarily quite the numbers that Ole Miss did, but it's very similar. And look where they are. Congrats to Indiana for doing all that they have with their players. They've maximized very well, and they're going to absolutely annihilate Purdue because they're better, they're motivated, and Purdue just can't stop the run. Again, I expect it to be 2nd down and 4 a great deal of the time. When that's the case, there is no defensive call that's going to work out all that well. Now, as it relates to the latest recruiting news, got a few things to go over. It's not a quote unquote super busy day. We've got a few though. Let's look through here and just see what we got in terms of the latest commitments. Go down to, there's one here. It's a little surprising to me. A little surprising. Jalen Williams, Bloomington South. Speaking of Indiana, Bloomington South High School is literally from IU's campus, maybe a mile. He's going to Cincinnati, 6'5", 215. So sometimes you just don't know. Cooper Long out of Salisbury School in Salisbury, Connecticut. Defensive lineman, 6'4", 250. He's headed to Wake Forest. Good for him. Jonathan Hatton, he was committed to OU, flipped to A&M. Now he's flipped back to Oklahoma. He's at a Steele High School just outside of San Antonio. He's one of the most athletic and big-bodied running backs in the class. Very talented young man. Good pickup for OU. Tayton Duncan out of Mustang, Oklahoma, safety, 5'11", 185. He's headed to Iowa State. We got Arkansas State getting TJ Spann out of Northwest Mississippi Community College. He's going to Arkansas State, defensive lineman, 6'3", 290. Troy picks up Jalen Rogers out of Holmes Community College in Goodman, Mississippi, interior lineman, headed over to the state of Alabama to play for Troy. Cooper McCutcheon at Archbishop Moeller's. He's a tight end, 6'4", 220. Moeller's one of the best programs in the state of Ohio. It's tradition rich. Good for Purdue. They're getting him. He is 6'4", 220. And we also have West Virginia picking up Caleb Gordon at Ashbrook High School in Gastonia, North Carolina, linebacker, 6 foot, 215 pounds. UTSA, Greg Wilford, Edna Carr High School in New Orleans, wide receiver, 5'8", 165 pounds. Again, he's going to University of Texas, San Antonio. Sticking in the state of Texas, Caden Scherer, Georgetown High School on the edge of Austin, Texas, interior offensive lineman, 6'5", 285, going to play for the Horns. Wake Forest with another, Lucas Smalls Allen out of Blessed Trinity Catholic, one of the best programs in the greater Atlanta area on the north side. He's going to Wake Forest. In Grand Valley, getting Braden Platt out of Brighton High School in Michigan, 5'9", 170. There are a few decommitments to kind of note as well. It's one of those deals, man. Like there's always somebody coming and going. I already talked about Hatton, decommits from A&M. Alabama loses Sam Utu, offensive lineman, 6'4", 320. Orange Lutheran out in California. That's a really important player. I don't know why that's going on, but I'm a little surprised by that one. Jordan Woods, Pell City, Alabama. He is no longer committed to Jacksonville State. Defensive lineman, 6'4", 220. Speaking of important, Florida State really needs offensive lineman. Deron Parks out of Nitro, West Virginia. He was down in the Sarasota area for a while. He's decommitted from Florida State. That's one of the better offensive linemen in the Knowles class. That one hurts a little bit for Florida State. Kansas is the school that lost Smalls Allen, and Scherer was committed to Stanford. So that's your latest recruiting information. And just another note here, I have been shocked that we haven't seen more formal announcements with the portal. I think a lot of these kids, this is just my theory, they are waiting to see exactly what Kiffin does, et cetera, because it's going to set off a spin cycle. It's going to set off a spin cycle. And there are some things that are lining up well for certain schools. Like, I'll just say this. I expect it to be a very good weekend for Auburn, not only in player retention, but getting a coach. And I also expect a few other schools to get news beyond the Kiffin situation, whether it's a head coach or assistant. So next week, perhaps, we'll see a lot of kids make announcements. I don't know. I'm confused by it. A little surprised that there still hasn't been more guys that have announced, but there are pieces moving behind the scenes. So it is what it is. All right, here are a few comments from the chat. Dr. Anderson, 2009. The NCAA and the committee does not know what they're doing. I think a lot of people would probably say that, to be really honest with you. Alan Beck, 4'3", 08. Keeping Ole Miss out would be a terrible look for the committee and the playoffs. I agree. I don't think they're going to do that, but I wanted to make it known that I didn't agree with that notion. If they drop them, I get it, and it is in their language to do it. But it's one thing to drop a school a few spots and another to eliminate them from the playoff. Big difference. All right. Katie, what's going on? This 12 team is completely illegitimate and bastardizes college football. I don't know if I go quite that far, but there are some concerns. Georgia Tech will have to control the ball and clock to have any chance against Georgia. I agree. I don't think they can do that because I think Georgia is good enough on defense to man up on the outside and put an extra defender in the box. If Georgia Tech has a scheme for that, it's with the option and using Haynes King. But to a certain degree, I just don't think they're going to get enough movement in pushing the D linemen back into the linebackers and safeties to cause enough havoc. And I think Georgia will scheme it up pretty good with slot blitzes, et cetera. They're going to get some negatives. I think they will keep Georgia Tech in some pretty long situations, and I think the game will be over by halftime. Straight up, that's my opinion. If I'm wrong, but that's what I see coming. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast a part of your day each and every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one network in the land. We are going to be talking about all the different predictions for the games that are Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, talking more about the coaches. There's stuff I still can't release. The coaches need to do it themselves. But we got a lot of coaching news that's going to happen this coming weekend through early next week. And then signing day, National Signing Day, don't forget about it, is December the 3rd. That's a week from Wednesday. So there's that. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the best classes. Then I'm going to be going on the road and discussing family because I'm going to be on the road into next week. Just a little precursor. I won't be posting quite as much, but we'll get into some of that too. But it'll be fun. DJ says, thanks, Brian. Appreciate you. I appreciate everybody that came in today. And everybody have a good one. We will see you again soon here on the Portal Podcast.